At 1 p.m. So it's the same.
And we're live.
Hey!
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the American Sci-Fi Classics track at Dragon Con Goes Virtual. I am very excited to use my pro wrestling announcer voice right now. But what I'm going to do is let you guys introduce yourselves, and then we will do our panel thing.
Woo.
So, one internet next to me, Bethany.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back. If you were here this morning, you got to see some of the fun. I'm Bethany Kessler. I kick around the internet as Dorothy Joan Gray as my pen name, and I'm just super happy to be here. And, Joe's hair is just still as magnificent as it was this morning.
Thank you.
That head look is in.
Yeah, I just have it 24/7 now. And 2 internets away from me, Denise.
Hi, everybody. I'm Denise Layman. I am a freelance artist. I work for the Army during the day job, but at night I do comic books. I do editing. I do all kinds of stuff. I'm a kid with an animation degree and know where to use it. You can find me on Instagram at my fancy little at layman's terms, because that's a play on my last name, because we're French and we hate the English language.
Bonjour.
Deanna's a francophone.
Non, moi je suis pas francophone. Mon mari est francophone.
What? I have no idea what that means.
And 3 internets away from me, my co-director, Mr. Gary Mitchell, and also in the same internet, Miss Jessa Phillips. How are you guys?
We're good.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. I couldn't go to Dragon Con, so I went to Boston.
Almost the same thing.
Yeah. I stuffed myself into a plane with a plague going on.
Good job. Good job, Gary.
And you brought it to Jessa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But as Joe said, I am co-director of the American Sci-Fi Classics track. You can find me at my Twitter handle, which is cut off in the video. You can find me at revolutionisf.com, where I do a weekly article about what physical media is coming out called Slip Discs, so you know what nerdy stuff you can pick up every week. And this.
I'm Jessa Phillips. You can just search for Good to Be a Geek and you'll find me. Otherwise in regular social media, just look for Sultry McZoe, and that's going to be me everywhere. But I talk about geekery and gamery and race and gender, so there you go.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, Deanna.
My name is Deanna Toxopeus. I hail from Canada, where I am right now. I don't really have a geeky internet right now, but I do run the RevSF Facebook page. So if you enjoy those memes, that's me for the most part.
And next to you is Lola. How are you?
Okay, my name is Lola Larsey. Sometimes you'll see me with another last name, but we don't talk about that. But I am a sci-fi writer who's been working on her second book for 7 years. I'll get there one day.
Good.
But I deviate from that by doing videos and podcasts and stuff. And so I'm all over the internet, and I've left my trail everywhere. So you'll probably step in my trail at some point.
And lastly, but never leastly, Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself. My absolute favorite. Sue Kisenwether.
I'm in a different cosplay today, though. This is, it seems appropriate for COVID times that I am in the chaos sequence from The Good Place.
Yes. Now I recognize it. I'm so jealous.
I recognize it for something. My brain kept going The Shining, and I'm like, oh, that's not.
But, my name is Sue. I blog and podcast over on Women at Warp. We are a feminist Star Trek podcast on the Roddenberry Podcast Network. So I talk about Star Trek, whether it's a Star Trek panel or not. So prepare yourselves.
I have a funny feeling that you're going to mention some Star Trek ladies.
Possibly. Can you imagine such a thing?
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd be surprised if you didn't. I'd be a little worried if you didn't, to be honest.
We know you were a replicant at that point.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, that's how we would know it was Mirror Universe Sue.
That's right. So who's starting us off? Gary?
Oh, I'm just moderating, so
okay.
So I will start us off with the basic core of the panel. This is the at least fourth time we've done Truly Outrageous, because I believe in representation. Representation matters, and lady heroes have been a strong component of science fiction. And we lost Lola.
No, Lola went away.
She'll be back. Yeah, I guess.
I hope. And so I believe that there's all these people that like to grumble online about how they put in all these women folk in our science fiction. I'm like, dude, have you been paying attention?
The women.
So I am going to pick at random to start with Deanna.
Yay!
We asked for everybody to bring to the table a lady that they really like, and how she inspired them and why they are important. So, Deanna?
So, Gary forced us to only come with one, which caused a lot of us a lot of stress, because I think most of us can say that it's not just one person we look up to a lot of people. And that's certainly true with me. So when I was preparing for this panel, I went through the usual list of suspects. So your Leias, your Uhuras, even Nurse Chapel, because, she taught me how to love unrequitedly. And I kept coming back to one person, and I pushed it out of my brain, and then I came back and I pushed it out of my brain. And I had to finally go with this person, because if you look at my personality and you look at my some of my flaws, yes, but also some of my strengths as a human being, really, I think they come from her. And we're going to call her sci-fi adjacent, because she's certainly done a lot of sci-fi things and a lot of fantasy things. But I brought a prop, and so I'm going with Miss Piggy.
Pigs in space.
And good choice.
Why her? Well, let's be blunt. She was on our TV every week in the Muppet Show. She was essentially the only girl on that show, except for Janice. But Janice would not be on every episode. But Piggy was on every episode, and she was normally a pretty important person in that episode. She always had a big scene. And yep, she's vainglorious. Yep, she's self-centered. Yep, that's all there. But she's also the person who picks herself up and with one shred of dignity after she's embarrassed herself exponentially and sort of walks out of the room. Which I am very good at embarrassing myself. I'm extraordinarily good at embarrassing myself. And that sort of inspiration of holding on as you walk out of the room is something that I kind of do. And I see a lot of myself in Piggy. She's also incredibly defensive of the people that she loves. And when somebody she loves is attacked, she goes on full blitz mode. And Gary has seen this when, somebody was attacking him on the internet, full blitz mode, that I'm protecting one of the people who's important to me. And so that's really who I see, and then there's the long-term on-again, off-again relationship with Kermit that they play up, and so she really is a character. And then as I thought more and more about it, I thought, well, is it just Piggy? And then I thought about my favorite movie when I was growing up. One of my favorite movies, not my favorite, but one of my favorites, believe it or not, was Auntie Mame. And Piggy and Auntie Mame are very similar characters, and I'm very drawn to Auntie Mame, which explains why I'm so drawn to Luoxana Troy, because she is the Auntie Mame of space. And so Piggy Auntie Mame, Piggy, and Luoxana form this little triangle, which if you can watch all three of them, you kind of understand who I am as a human being. And it's been an interesting retrospective these last few days as I thought about this. And, Piggy's a plus-size woman who dresses not for her size, but for how she feels. Mm-hmm. And she certainly, has had décolletage long before décolletage was a thing. Really. I mean, she's just who she is, and she's loud, and her fashion choices are loud, which again, yeah. So, yeah, if you want to talk about a character who I also think is going to be underrepresented, I think, in most people's list, I think it's Piggy. I think for me it's Miss Piggy. So that is my truly outrageous role model.
Piggy is the best. She always has been.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Who else has some thoughts on Miss Piggy?
Oh, I mean, I think that she's meant to be comedy, right? But being the only woman, I guess, character on the Muppet Show for a whole generation, you're telling kids like this is this is how women behave, right? This is how to be a woman. This is the example. This is the character you are to identify with Miss Piggy. And I think that characters like her became sort of a thing around that time, of this like brash, loud, brassy broad, basically. And I think that they created a generation of women to be reckoned with.
Yeah, that was one of the things I loved about her is if you got on her bad side, she would yell at you. She would kick you out of the room. She would
literally
you into the next week.
Karate chop. She knew karate. Hi.
It took, and I'm embarrassed to think about how long it took me to realize that was a pun. Pork chop.
Yeah.
I was today years old. I didn't think about it.
I think I always liked Miss Piggy, even growing up, because I grew up with the Muppet Show, I grew up with Fraggle Rock, I grew up with Baby Muppets, or whatever they called that.
Muppet Babies.
That's what it was. Thank you. I always liked Piggy because she never changed. She never sat there and said, I'm going to change given the situation that I'm in. It's like, even before, because I'm one of those people, I've grown out of it. I've learned how to grow out of it. But for the longest time when I was growing up, I would change to fit the situation that I was in because, I was made fun of for so long. And I figured it was easier to be a wallflower than it was to stand up and be your own person. To my detriment. But, Piggy was always somebody I admired because she wasn't like that. Every movie Miss Piggy was in, every episode Miss Piggy was in, if she was not the center of attention, she would make herself the center of attention. And I was just recently telling my boss, I said, because I work for the Army and it's very much a man's world and that comes with its own special problems. But I told my boss, I said, I will not be ignored. I absolutely refuse to be ignored. And for women, it's really easy for men in the Army to ignore you because they don't see your contribution. And especially for me as civilian personnel, which if you don't know, it means that I'm employed by the federal government, but I'm not actually a soldier. I was a sailor, go Navy, beat Army, but I'm not that anymore. I work for the federal government, but I'm not serving in the federal government anymore. But it's really easy for soldiers to ignore women. And, Miss Piggy, I remember Miss Piggy being somebody that nobody would ever ignore. And I promised myself when I turned 30, that's how I was going to be. No one would ever ignore me again. And that is directly linked to Miss Piggy.
And if you've been watching that, Muppets Now is one of her Facebook people commented. Her lifestyle section with Uncle Deadly is one of the highlights of the show. Every episode.
Yes, of the new Muppet Now. Yes, Dudley is as sort of the assistant, and if you saw the most recent episode where she was interviewing Aubrey Plaza, she sort of ducked out, and Uncle Dudley came in a blonde wig and doubled for her, so they could do the shots of the reaction shots for Aubrey, and it was sort of they were poking fun of Hollywood and how Hollywood does those kind of things, and it was quite clever. She is a unique character, and they use her, like in Muppets Now, they're using her to poke fun at Instagram culture and celebrity culture. But if you think about what we grew up watching, it was poking fun at vaudeville. And vaudeville, like it was very much out of that vaudeville tradition that the Muppet Show is a vaudeville show, even to the point of having the two old guys in the balcony critiquing everybody. It's like heckling. It's a vaudeville tradition, and that's what it was. It was a variety show, right? So yeah, she is those are often the highlights of those shows is Piggy and Dudley together.
All right, so moving on, I am going to go to the other corner and go with Lola.
Okay, so one of my current favorite shows is The Expanse. I could spend hours talking about how much I love this show. I've been listening to the books on audio, and please don't hate mail me or anything, but this is one of the few cases where I think the show is actually better than the books.
Yes.
At Lola Larsey.
Go ahead, tweet me. I've already been blocked by William Shatner. I'm not sure I can go further down.
That's a badge of honor. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's a badge of honor.
I haven't even
Just
got
rose like 10 points.
Yeah. So one of my favorite shows is The Expanse. And one of the best characters is Naomi Nakata. And you may say, how did she get that last name Nakata? That's different. Well, I don't know if they really go into detail, but I think something like her grandfather was Japanese, or somewhere in her lineage there's Japanese. And she's a really fascinating character. She's one of the main stars, and she is extremely empathetic, very compassionate, very kind, but she's also tough because she came from the Belt. And the Belt is like the blue collar, rough and tumble, the outsiders. And they have a little bit of an attitude because, they feel like, oh, those Earthers and Martians have it good. They have a planet to stand on. We have asteroids, or whatever I'm trying to say. But so, you kind of have that chip on your shoulder. But she doesn't really have that chip, but she does have that affiliation with working class, which I understand because I'm working class. And you kind of learn throughout the show that there's a lot more going on the surface. She doesn't really talk about her personal feelings or her past much. And we learn throughout the show that that's because something very horrible happened and she feels responsible. And she is saddled with this extreme guilt, which I don't know if I could handle what happened with her. I don't know if I could handle, having to carry that around because it was bad. It was bad. And she ended up having to leave her young son and start a new life. And she has several advanced degrees. She's an engineer and she's brilliant. But, whereas normally with these degrees, she would be working at some fancy, university or big company, making all kinds of money and top of her field and all that stuff. She's, on a freight hauler, which is, they make a point sometime in the show that if you're working here, something bad happened in your life. It's not, you took a wrong turn somewhere if you end up on the Canterbury. It's a hauling ship. But, she loves her friends. They're all very tight groups. She ends up, in love with the captain, and she's the XO. And she's just extremely strong, extremely clever. And another thing I was going to mention is, though race doesn't seem to play a part in this because it's, hundreds of years in the future, hopefully we've got to pass that. But there is code switching going on. Because she's from the Belt, they have their own language, and they're a very tight-knit group, and they tend not to trust interplanet people. So she serves on a ship that is pretty much all interplanet people, Martian and 2 Earth people. So she kind of has her way of talking to them, and she has a very clipped, actually British accent when she's talking with them. But then when she gets around Belters, she starts getting that Belter, act to her voice. And she kind of struggles with that for a small amount of time. She actually goes back to the Belt and to Tycho so that she could kind of be more around her people. And she struggles. She misses her home area and her home people, but she also loves where she is now. And so she feels kind of torn. She feels a little bit like she's a traitor to the Belt because she doesn't serve with the Belt anymore. And that's been a struggle with her.
Yeah, it's a great show. It's one of the best sci-fi shows to come along in a while. Anybody else?
Naomi Nakata for life, man. I mean, she keeps the Rossi going. Like if you I love Jim. I love Jim. Jim is adorable, but Jim can't do squat without Naomi backing him up.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other woman that deserves the honorable mention is Drummer, because Drummer is fantastic. Like, yeah, baby, you go.
And she's got a Belter accent, and I love it. It's just so unusual. Hers is a little different than everybody else's. I don't remember if they ever addressed that, but hers is, I don't know, it's got a tinge to it that I just love. I love hearing her talk.
If you go onto the Belter wiki, they'll teach you how to do, like, say the Belter language. But the big thing about the Belter, when you do Belter Loda, you know, it's all about where you're coming from, like where you've grown up. Like for me, apparently I have a Midwest accent. I guess I don't know these things. But so the Belter accent comes, it's like, you know, if you're coming from the South part of the United States, you're going to have like that Creole.
That's true. Dialect.
If you come from the Russia area, you know, the Ukraine, Romania, Poland, all of that, you're going to have like that real heavy Slavic accent. The Belter language really is region of the United States-ish, I mean, kind of, or world-ish specific. So if you listen within the show, you'll pick up on those different words. They have French Belter, they've got Japanese Belter, they've got Russian Belter, they've got all kinds of Belter languages, but the accents are very much where, like, you know, New Orleans or Russia or wherever like the heaviest influence comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense, because the belt isn't just one thing. You have the asteroids where people work on, but you also have moons. People live on moons. People stay on stations like Tycho Station and never leave. So it's not just one place. That would make sense.
I imagine there's a Belter out there somewhere with a Minnesota accent who goes around like this all day, don't you know? Oh yeah. Yeah. You know, they're talking like they're from Fargo, North Dakota, or somebody with a really heavy New York accent.
Well, if you can have a Martian with a Texas accent, I mean, I love it. I love it, but I'm like, no, cowboy. From Mars.
All right, so I'm going to now bounce to the opposite corner to you.
Okay, yeah. So I've done this particular panel a few years, and I always pick Wonder Woman or Xena or Zoe Washburn because I love them all. But this year I decided to go back to like my first influential woman in sci-fi. So I went with Barbarella because my mother raised me right. She was probably my first exposure to a woman in sci-fi. And you really, I mean, it's a great example to go from. I mean, it is Barbarella, say what you will about
no, Barbarella is awesome, okay?
I mean, she is. I mean, she is a lone woman in space. The president contacts her to find the most important person that's going to save the world. And then she goes off on this adventure all by her lonesome and gets it done. I mean,
she's Jane Fonda.
Yes. Oh my God, who's gorgeous. I mean, the woman is still gorgeous. But you know, she never balks at anything. She's always inquisitive. She always, just full steam ahead. She just adapts where she needs to and gets it done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I mean, Jessa kind of said it all right there.
Well, and as much as we talk about, how that movie might be shot from the male gaze, there is a feminist argument to be made about sexual liberation as an expression of feminism, because of what the sort of the 50s mystique that women are these closed creatures, and that's not what Barbarella is. She is open. She is experiencing her sexuality in all of its permutations and forms. And and that is actually a very feminist way to approach sexuality. It's just who I am, and I'm going to do it. Now, it was shot with a male gaze in mind. It would be interesting to see if they could do a remake of Barbarella, maybe shot with somebody like Patty Jenkins, because I was watching the new Wonder Woman a few nights ago, and it's very obvious that it's not shot for the male gaze. It's very obvious, and it's amazing, and it's a great movie. So it would be interesting to take Barbarella and still have that sexual element, still have that sensualness, that you know, the writhing and all that stuff, but now give it a female director or a female director of photography and see what you do with it. I think that would be fascanating.
Can I say that we need to keep the costumes, the original costumes from Barbara?
I love
we run into this discussion a lot with the original series of Star Trek, with the miniskirt, right? Of like, is this a sexist costume? Is it not a sexist costume? And in universe, at the very least, what we can say is that a piece of clothing is not inherently sexist. It is about whether that character, or in our life, that person, decides to wear that costume. It's about the intent of the wearer. And, you know, when you are making a show and it is decided by men for the male gaze and a movie is shot for the male gaze, yeah, that certainly affects how a lot of audiences are going to interpret something, but you can still take feminist lessons from media that appears to be very misogynist.
Even when it is from a male perspective, I mean, first of all, the overall great queen of their main city, I mean, it's a queen. Like, nobody balks at that. I mean, there's just always a woman in power, even though you don't see too many women in the movie itself. But also from a costuming perspective, one of the things I love about it, even though they're very provocative costumes, they're not dysfunctional. They never get in the way. She is still able to do everything she needs to do, including tumble around wherever she's going. So I can always at least appreciate that. There is a way to, yes, be provocative, but still get the job done in a miniskirt if it's appropriate. If it's not appropriate, then she's just going to throw on some thigh-high boots and a unitard and be done. That, as long as she's got a gun holster. So.
Now the actress, I'm blanking because I'm still half asleep and half drunk. But from last night. But the actress who plays Deanna Troi, any other moment I know her name, but I can't
Marina
remember.
Sirtis.
Thank you, Marina Sirtis. I saw her. She did a staged talk, whatever you call it, a few weeks ago, and I saw it. And she was talking about the first year when she had to wear, I guess it was the one-piece mini suit or whatever, mini skirt. She hated it. She absolutely hated it, but they made her wear it. And she said the male people, the men? Men.
Male people is fine.
Yeah.
Male people, yeah, they got the two-piece that breathed, and, you know, you could have a little bit of a punch and it would be okay. Because
everybody froze.
I think we froze.
Yeah. Gary and Jessa froze. Keep going, Lola.
Yeah, you're fine. Keep going.
But anyways, she had to lose weight when she first started. You know, she was a normal weight, healthy, but in order to feel right, and she kind of felt like she had pressure to lose weight, so she had to become super skinny to wear the whatever they wanted to put her in, and she wasn't happy about that. But then,
absolutely. When she finally lost enough weight to the producer's satisfaction is when they put Deanna Troi in the standard uniform. And it was the costume designer decision, from what I've read, that in order to distract from what they thought was her tummy was the reason she had such low cut tops throughout the first 5 years. She just puts on the uniform and chain of command.
What jerks.
Yeah. She did the in that talk, she talked about, you know, the skinnier she got, what was it? Her bust size was in direct proportion to how much science she could suddenly talk about on the show. Yes. Like, what even, you know, but I mean, I guess that was pretty typical of the time. And I remember, because I just got into TNG not too long ago. All through college, I watched the original series. It's what got me through college. And then I watched TNG, and I remember seeing that talk and then watching TNG and actually watching it happen. Like, Deanna Troi suddenly got smarter and her boobs got bigger. And I'm like, okay. It's just, it's upsetting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And I never realized
there's-
that growing up.
There's a lot of upsetting stuff about Next Gen, especially in the early seasons.
Yeah.
And I'll wait for my turn.
Yeah, we'll jump back to Barbarella because we were talking about Barbarella.
Okay.
This is a natural segue. We'll head right to you, Sue.
So the last several years, most of the times that I have done a truly outrageous panel, I've brought up Beverly Crusher because she is the biggest influence on me, the earliest influence on me in Star Trek. I was not planning to talk about Beverly today. However, I do want to mention, Gates McFadden was fired after the first season, specifically because of a argument with Maurice Hurley, one of the writers / producers. And as she explains it, she's like, I came from a theater background. We were encouraged to share our ideas. We were encouraged to get into our characters and to ask questions and to ask for things and to make suggestions. And he hated her. I have heard that on some panels, she has literally said the sentence, I was fired for being a feminist. And at the end of the first season, Maurice Hurley basically said, it's her or me. So they fired Gates McFadden. And he left after season 2. And it was a campaign by basically Patrick Stewart campaigned with Gates to get her to rejoin the cast. And then a few seasons later, they literally have Beverly Crusher say that sexism doesn't exist anymore in the future. Ugh, it drives me nuts.
Fantastical. We don't have toilets either. Nobody goes to the bathroom.
Right.
So.
But I mean, just to prove it, right over here, the shelf behind me is every Beverly Crusher that is licensed and several that are commissions. So I know a lot about that character. But the one I had planned on talking about today was actually Lwaxana Troi.
Yes.
And Lwaxana she's a lot, right? And she's I think a lot like Piggy, actually. She is intended to be this brash, annoying, abrasive character that we don't really like, and she's there for comedic relief. However, what Lwaxana is, and she certainly grows over her time on TNG and DS9, is what she is confident and sure of herself. Mm-hmm. But she is also vulnerable at times, especially when she has her scenes with Odo. And they have this great scene when they're stuck in a turbolift on DS9 where he's about to revert to his liquid state because he can't hold the form anymore. It's been 16 hours. And she takes off her wig. And she's like, it's okay. I get it. We all basically dress ourselves up to go out in the world and put on the face that we show everybody. But it's okay to be vulnerable. And I'm going to show you what's under my wig and tell you that it's okay for you if you need the time to be you, if you need the time to revert. Don't be embarrassed by it. It's who you are. And those conversations that she has where she opens up are truly amazing. We also learn at the end of Next Gen that she's had a deeply traumatic life. She lost a daughter who was very young. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot about her. And Majel Barrett specifically would tell stories that people would stop her in parking lots and thank her for her work of showing that women over 40 belong in Hollywood. And that was Lwaxana Troi.
Oh.
And there is something about Lwaxana being very, shall we say, sexually aggressive. that is not a part of me. Well, that is not a part of me as an asexual person. But I just want to say I have a headcanon about this. And that is not that she is a bad telepath and doesn't know that Picard's not interested. I think, as a woman and with a daughter, that she is aware of all of the times that, when being hit on, women are made uncomfortable. And I think she knows that what she's doing is making these men uncomfortable and giving them a taste of their own medicine in a little bit. So I think that she's doing that on purpose and enjoys that I guess we can call it teasing you know, because there are times when Lwaxana certainly comes close to crossing the line, and I'm not going to defend that.
No.
You know, it's a TV show. It's made for comedy, but especially in her interactions with Picard, I think it's much more teasing. I think he knows she's not serious, but she still enjoys making this guy a little bit uncomfortable with the attention that she's giving him. And it's kind of a power move.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I respect that.
And you could make an argument she's assertive, and I think a lot of us could learn how to be more assertive. I'm certainly not. When I was growing up, I was not assertive, and in my 20s, I was not assertive. It wasn't until the last 10 years that I learned to ask for what I want, you know, and so she knows how to ask for what she wants.
I think you can also make an argument that if Lwaxana had been written by a man, all of that sexual aggressiveness would be coded as normal. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, maybe it wouldn't be pervy, it wouldn't be creepy, even now. So if you think about, I'm trying to think of a character, an equivalent character who hits on every woman that walks through the door. Howard. Yeah, in Big Bang, although he's written as creepy, but that's more because of the toys, because he's got toys, right? And that's not normal for men. So if he was like a jockey kind of guy, that kind of sexual aggressiveness would be considered normal. But because she's a woman,
it's how we think of Kirk. It's how we think of Riker.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Even in the same show, right? Riker, right? Captain Jack. Like, think about Captain Jack in Doctor Who. And, like, there's a good character example. Literally any sentient being that crosses his path that he finds attractive.
Lwaxana meets Captain Jack fanfic.
Oh, yeah, that would be amazing.
I'm like, oh wow.
She would be occupied for the rest of her life.
I think between the two of them, they'd create a new Big Bang and start a new universe.
That would be awesome, and they'd all be immortal.
It would definitely be a plot where sex was the answer.
Yes. Yes.
69, not 42.
30 years.
Wow.
If you haven't, read Peter David's Q-in-Law, which is an episode that should have happened where Lwaxana and Q show up on the Enterprise at the same time. It's amazing. They got her and John Delancey to do the audiobook. Yes, there it is.
Signed by one Majel Barrett.
Lovely.
Well, Peter David tells the story that when they did the audio recording, the Paramount came to them and said, "You can't do that. If two people do it, it's a dramatic reading, not an audio book. So you can't do that." And they went, "You mean you want to tell Majel Barrett Roddenberry that she can't do a Star Trek book?" And they went, "Just this once, don't do it again."
She's also the main reason that this book got written. Like, not even the audio recording, which is phenomenal, but like, she's why this book exists. She's why a lot of things exist.
It's true. Awesome.
All right, so Bethany, odd or even?
Odd.
Okay, Denise, you're up.
Oh, it's my turn. So again, I mean, Lwaxana is, I like to say Lwaxana is me in 30 years, but she is not who I'm going to talk about. So when I was a kid, keep in mind, I grew up very much in the 90s. You know, my first foray into science fiction was actually Jurassic Park, and it scared the bejesus out of me because we were in a airport and we had to run to a flight. Don't ask me where we were going. I have no recollection of this, only the recollection of a giant T-Rex on the television coming at me. So it wasn't until later that I saw that I saw a movie that would be the penultimate, my second favorite movie next to Jurassic Park, because Jurassic Park is the perfect movie. I will die on this hill. My second favorite, always and forever movie, The Mummy with Brendan. And there's one specific character in there that was it for me as this young, really, really awkward, really I was an awkward kid growing up, and I was angry, the whole teenager thing. It was Evelyn O'Connell, née Carnahan. And the reason why this movie stuck with me so much is because Evie is completely unapologetic about who she is. Completely. Just, I am a librarian. I'm not an adventurer. I'm not Jonathan. I'm not going to sit and gamble. I'm not anything. What I want to be when I grow up is a Bembridge scholar, which I'm assuming, which one has to assume that it's a British Museum type scholarly thing. I want to be a Bembridge Museum scholar. That is exactly what I want to be. And for a kid, growing up as a little girl, even in the 90s, it wasn't something that, little girls aspired to be. Librarian and stuff like that. That wasn't even considered as a career field when you grow up. And so to have this woman sitting there and being like, no, I want to be a librarian. Knowledge is power. Patience is a virtue. Screw you. I have the answers to all of your questions because I'm the only one of you that can actually understand this long dead language. And so to see that was like, holy shit. Girls can do that. It's okay for a girl to be really smart. It's okay for a girl to have the quintessential, essential plot specific knowledge to get you through problems. It's okay because, previous to that, no movie that I had seen had ever done that. And so, it was huge. And then, and one of the other big things was Evie is central to that movie. You take Evie out, you don't have a movie. You do not. You absolutely do not. The entirety of the Mummy plot falls apart without Evie. And that was so special because, no movie had done that before. And, Evie was central to every scene. And when she was captured, it wasn't okay, I'm going to snatch you because we need Brendan Fraser to have a plot motivation. It was Evie's like, look, son, we're going to go with him and you're going to do the thing that I know you want to do. And I'm going to facilitate that. And as young as I was to not really understand what that meant, it was still a huge impression on me because it's like, wow, girls can do that. And then afterward, I had seen Marion Ravenwood, who is another big one. And then I came back and watched The Mummy Returns. Now, in The Mummy Returns, my big takeaway was Rachel Weisz had the body type that I grew up with. And that is such a huge impression on a young kid because she was still desirable. She was still able to kick ass. She was still super smart and she was still the center of the plot, even though, they had the death thing and Brendan Fraser had to save her, but it was her kid that was trying to save her, so it wasn't contrived. It was organic to the story that needed to be told. And these movies made such a huge impression on me for those specific reasons. And Evie and, like I was telling Bethany, we do not recognize the third Mummy movie. We can recognize the Scorpion King. That's fine because that was fun. I mean, you got some great, why is this scene even in there type thing.
Drinking movie.
Right? We do not recognize the third Mummy movie because Evie is not in it. And she is such an important character. Mm-hmm. And to me, personally, because she was and she remains my role model growing up, even though, I'm 30 and technically considered an adult, but that's a lie and we all know it. Evie is still very much somebody who I want to be when I grow up because she's just so cool. And she is the center of her own story. And that's what's important.
And between Evie and Rick, that is some of the most natural, most organic chemistry that I have seen on screen since the Addams Family.
Right.
They're a functional family unit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
devoted to her.
Yeah. I mean, it's Gomez and Morticia, and then it's Evie and Rick. And yeah.
I think one of the most important things about that relationship is Rick is not threatened by her.
Oh, no, intelligence. He values that,
willing
right?
to just hold her handbag and let her go.
Her way out of it eventually.
Yeah, and like when he knows that she's smarter than him and he needs her to do something, he just steps back and lets her do it. And the only thing that he says is, can we hurry this up? And she just sings out, "Patience is about you. Not right now, it ain't."
Not right now.
He does. And it's so healthy and so good. And it's just like, I wish that the male viewing audience would take that into considerations. Like, you're not supposed to be threatened by whomever you're with, male, female, I really don't care at this point. Your partner, you're not supposed to be threatened by your partner. You help them, they help you, and you play off of each other's strengths. And that is just, theirs is the most beautiful relationship I think I have ever seen on screen. Next to Gomez and Morticia, and then Dr. Grant and Dr. Sattler on Jurassic Park, because they had a great relationship too. They figured out that it wouldn't work between them, and they were fine. He still relied on her as a friend. The third Jurassic Park movie, because we don't talk about the second one.
Well, the whole reason the second movie, one of the main reasons I love it, is an exploration of relationship dynamics. Because at the end of the movie, we have Evie and Rick, where Rick and the mummy have fallen into the crevasse. And Rick screams at Evie to, save yourself. And she's like, "No, you moron." And then the mummy yells at Nux and Moon saying, "Help me." And she's like, "Nope, I'm out."
I'm gone.
On his face of, "Oh, my relationship is not what I thought it was." And let
eternity.
And you feel bad for him too. That's the thing. Oh man, you did yourself to resurrect her, and she just screwed you over, dude. Sorry.
He's like, "Peace out."
I'm out.
All right, so this means we end with Bethany.
Gosh, I think I've changed my mind about 46 times since this panel started. I mean, because again, like Denise was, I was a weird, awkward kid growing up. I had books, I had trees. I enjoyed being left alone with my books and my trees. Like, I would literally climb to the top of a tree with a pillow, a flashlight, and a couple of books, and just spend all day there. It was quiet. But I mean, and this is probably a more recent example, but kind of one of my favorite sci-fi women is Dutch from Killjoys.
Oh,
because Dutch is everything I ever wanted to be in life. Dutch can do because I grew up in we're a military family, but we're like also an old military family.
Oh, girl, I'm right there with you.
So
goes back to Constantinople.
Charlemagne,
Charlemagne. I knew it started with a C.
74 generations up from me in an unbroken line is Charlemagne. 44 up from me is Robert I of Scotland.
Nice.
His second wife. So yeah, we definitely come from that long, old, really steeped in tradition military family. Like, my grandparents are Navy and Air Force, respectively, and my mother married Army, but I think that was a rebellion thing.
That's a rebellion.
Yeah, so, I mean, it could have been worse. She could have married a Marine.
Shots fired.
Break out the crayons. We're going.
Send your hate mail to
Puppycast.com.
But kind of Dutch can go from super, super chill, super like low key to being, perfectly dressed at a crushy party. And for a lot of my life, you had to do that kind of like rapid code switching. And she's just awesome. And I want her outfits, all of them. And I want her like amazing, awesome badass skills. Like, she's just like she the badass just seeps out of her. And and her actress, Hannah John Kamen, is just phenomenal. So and I love that Dutch gets to be tough. She gets to be in charge, but she also gets to be vulnerable. And she gets to be smart, and it's one of those things that we don't often get to see people, like female characters, doing all of that. And she, you know, and it's not treated like it's anything weird. It's not treated like it's anything like out there. She does what she's got to do, and it works. So, yeah, Dutch. Because my other backup was Susan Ivanova, and she's just God. So
I mean, no one can touch Susan Ivanova. She was the best Battlestar of Babylon 5.
Yeah,
it's hands down best.
Hands down.
Yeah, no boom today, boom tomorrow.
Boom tomorrow. Always a boom
Always
tomorrow.
Boom tomorrow.
Mhm.
Boom.
There is nothing happening in sector whatever number that
There
was.
is nothing happening in sector 14.
14. Nothing happening.
You will dock on Babylon 5 when I say you'll dock on Babylon 5. Until then, have a nice day.
Amazing.
Yeah, or the just remember, you know, I told you so. I told you so. Ivanova is God. I will listen to Ivanova.
If not, Ivanova will personally come and rip your lungs out.
Trust Ivanova. Trust yourself.
I didn't watch B5.
Yeah,
but
she
sounds a
actually
lot
is.
like
Yeah.
Kira Nerys
Well,
to me.
and there's a lot. I mean, that's a whole other panel, right? Like,
God,
JMS did pitch Babylon 5 to Paramount, right? So, how much of DS9 is Babylon 5?
They need to release the rights to Babylon 5 so we can get a reboot of Babylon 5 because that would be fantastic.
Oh, well, JMS has gone on record saying that as long as the guy who played the Doctor and the guy who played Jakar insist on remaining dead, he does not want to do a remake or reboot.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
I think it would be very hard to replace Andreas Katsoulis but that's
Yeah,
another panel.
But it doesn't have to be. I mean, make the Babylon 5 universe like there is a Star Trek universe.
The problem is they did that, and it didn't. It's uneven. It's not. It's like Crusade.
Yeah, I would give quite a lot to see more about David and how that kind of works, and the thing in the jar. I mean, I would also give quite a lot to see Veer's Veer as Emperor.
Oh yeah. No, I'd pay to see that. I'd pay to see Veer as Emperor. That would be fun.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to 2 comments. Angela Debbie says another good sci-fi couple is on Voyager, Torres and Paris.
Sue, your cat. I think your cat's purring is being picked up, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
like, what is that wah-wah sound?
I apologize. She was
I saw Mummy coming to life.
She was on top of the keyboard, so I picked her up, and that apparently didn't go well.
Yeah. And Kelly Cascado, I'm sorry if I say your name wrong. She says girl characters didn't get to be bookish introverts in the 80s TV, which is her formative years. We've made strides since then, but would still love to see more bookish introverts. Panel?
Yeah.
And I think not where extroversion wins the day at the end, like she somehow magically has to become extroverted in order to be the hero. No, us introverts, we stay introverts. Like I'm an ambivert, so I have to code switch depending on which job I'm in. Just because you have to be extroverted in order to be, a secretary and program manager and things like that. But like when I get home, I become introverted, and I hate the fact that within Hollywood and within the television world, extroversion wins the day. It's like, no, dude. At the end, I'm still introverted. I'm still really smart, and
I mean,
I think that the writers, producers, television doesn't know how to handle an introverted character. They don't know how to write a scene of somebody just wanting to be alone without turning that into somebody who is antisocial. Because being introverted is not the same as being antisocial.
It's hard
It's hard to make someone who wants to sit alone reading their books a story that somebody wants to watch. You watch a show, you listen to a story, you see a movie because of the action that's going on. And I think that a lot of us introverts in our preference tend to be more still. And is that going to sell? Is that going to be a story that holds somebody's attention? So I think it's very possible, but I think a lot of people don't know how to do it. and it is a very difficult thing to do. And if I may, I would say I think the character who best exemplifies that right now in sci-fi is Commander Saru.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Discovery or something?
Yeah, Saru.
But there's
right,
a whole trope. If you go to TV tropes, it's either loners are freaks or loners are weird.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. Is like in so many in any storytelling, it's the getting the person to stop being an introvert is the story. And
well, and some of it also comes around is there's a lot of different like narrative tips and tricks you can do to make it like more visually interesting. But a lot of people aren't willing to put like that time in. Also, again, honorable mention to Maeve in Westworld as another one, because yes, I will let Tandy Newton be my bodyguard any day of the week.
Well, as much as I don't want to give props to the original creator, Luna Lovegood in the films, I think, is a very good example.
She is.
Well,
and I feel like she's weird though.
If you're looking for introverted characters or reserved characters like Zoe Washburn in Firefly, she's not like in the forefront. She's not a Kaylee. She's not even a River who's like woo. She is like
business.
She's got stuff to do. She's busy. And Tara from Buffy is very much, and which is interesting because she's partnered with Willow, who's also not sort of in the front. She's written as an opposite to Buffy, who is an extrovert, right?
So that's also when they change Willow, though.
That's when Willow changed, right? Absolutely.
You can actually look at Michael Burnham and Tilly. Now, Sonequa Martin Green, she is the sweetest, nicest actress. Oh my God, I loved meeting her at Emerald City Comic Con. Holy crap, if I could have hugged her, I would. And she's an Alabama fan, and I'm an Auburn fan, so that was fun.
I wish they made Tilly the potty mouth.
Yeah, but that, I think, is a really good extroversion-introversion relationship, because at the end of the day, Michael Burnham is still introverted. And I think they could continue to push that a little bit, because you see Tilly try to bring her out of her shell, and Michael's like, But you see like a little bit just here and there, but there's that respect of boundaries that Tilly has for Michael's introversion. Like Tilly, I think there's an episode where Tilly is like, come on, let's do this. And Michael's like, no. And Tilly's like, oh, okay. And she just leaves Michael alone. And that is a really healthy extroversion, introversion relationship, where boundaries are respected.
I think that relationship and that dynamic is also really interesting, because Sylvia Tilly is a character that a lot of people read as either socially awkward or potentially on the autism spectrum.
Yes.
And so to have her be the extrovert of the pair makes it very interesting, and that she feels comfortable in those social situations.
And she's another one who is super smart and doesn't need to prove anything. And she is socially awkward. That's how I read her. And I identify with Tilly so much, because I saw her first scene when she came into the show. I was like, holy shit, that's me. I was like, I'm Tilly. Yay, I finally another character that I can identify with. This is amazing.
And it's like another good example, and I know we're running short on time.
We're gonna keep going.
Yes.
But until they shut us down, we'll keep going. Is Pidge from Voltron Legendary Defender.
Pidge! I love Pidge!
Like literally, and of course this got funny because I got dragged into it by my roommate, who was a longtime original Voltron fan, and so when she found out Netflix was kind of bringing it back, she was super excited and dragged me into it, for which I have only just forgiven her. And then of course, because again I'm a horrible child, I then dragged my parents into it, and especially since my mom's like, so when's the next season? I'm like, yeah, you have to wait till December, and she started screaming. But again, I am a terrible child. But I watched the first couple episodes and went, oh, oh yeah, it's really obvious which one of these people I am. And she's like, yeah, you bitch. And I'm like, yeah, with less great math skills. I was like, yeah, no, that's accurate. That's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Well, because she's in the title of the panel, can we talk about Ripley?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. I love
I want to talk
Ripley.
about Ripley.
We didn't talk about
Can we
Ripley
talk
or
about
Ray yet.
Vasquez? I mean,
So I can talk about both of them.
Vasquez, yeah.
That orange cat that you saw before and was purring into the microphone was almost named Jonesy.
So the funny thing about Ripley's character, and I don't know how many people know this, but Ripley's character, and this is so important because I point this out between Ripley and Ray. And full disclosure, I am not Ray's biggest fan. I find there's and it's not her fault. It's not Daisy Ridley's fault. It is completely the fault of the writers who got into a writer's room and were like, oh my God, how do we write women's? And
Rose Tico for life, man. Rose
yeah,
Tico
and
for life.
they wrote a character that who they thought was what women were like in science fiction and is not. However, in complete opposition to that, Ripley was written as a male character, and they literally switched the pronouns when when she read Ripley's part, they switched the pronouns. Bam, there's Ripley, and there you go. And that is why I think Ripley resonates with so many women, because it's like, hey, I can do all of that. I'm smart. I'm capable. I can problem solve in any given situation. You give me the tools, I can kick alien ass. And then you look at Ray, and again, please don't excommunicate me. You look at Ray, and it's like, no, this is not. And there's nothing wrong with Mary Sue's for girls writing Mary Sue's and wanting to insert themselves into universes and be the center of attention. I'm not saying that a Mary Sue is a problem, because I did it when I was a kid. I did it. I absolutely did.
I mean,
but, you know, when it comes to writing a woman in a Star Wars universe who is supposed to be a Jedi, who is supposed to,
Leia.
Right. You can't give her those skills and not give her common sense.
Yeah, and they tore that away from Ray, and they said, no, we're gonna make her a Mary Sue, and I'm like,
well, the funny part is that you look at Ray, and she is like, she's episode 4 Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's the thing, and that's what makes a lot of people mad, is because they can't, is because they if they're criticizing Ray, they then have to confront the fact that their fave boy is
just as bad.
Luke is
a
Mary Sue.
Luke is a Marty, whatever. Marty.
But then again, I mean, granted,
thank you. And again, it goes back to that what I said about Luoxana earlier. If Ray had been written as a man, yep, there are writing problems with the sequel trilogy. There are and there are directorial problems with the switching of tone, and there's also fan service problems where they're trying to make people happy instead of simply telling us a good story.
Thank you.
I have so many thoughts.
Like I have this whole panel and a different track. But the fact is, if Ray had been written as a man, we would not have had as many problems with her. And part of it speaks to the embedded sexism in the greater culture and in science fiction, to be very precise. There is a perception that if it's a woman, automatically it's wrong.
I think the message to writers is stop writing genders. Write people.
Characters.
And let the actors or the characters direct it. So stop writing genders. But I mean, the Mary Sue thing, like, I'm gonna history lesson for just a second here, because that comes literally out of Star Trek fan fiction, like a lot of stuff. And from a character named Mary Sue, they are self-insert characters. They can do no wrong. Everyone loves them. They're super smart, and they solve all the problems. And I think it is important to know that definition, because the term Mary Sue gets thrown around to mean female character I don't like. And that's not what that means. every female character you don't like is not a Mary Sue. There are I'm a little bit more. The thing in Star Trek fandom right now is that a lot of people who don't like Beckett Mariner, who is the lead of Lower Decks, the new animated show, and they're throwing around the term Mary Sue.
Bullshit.
And like there is, you can not like that character. I think you might not like that character for reasons of race and gender, but she's, regardless of that, she's not a Mary Sue.
No, she is not.
She does not have all the answers. She's arrogant. She definitely has character flaws. So
she's not liked by everybody.
Right. And if you're going to, spoilers. But if you're going to use that criticism, make sure you're doing it right. Because not everybody that you don't like is a Mary Sue, and a lot of male characters that you probably do like Captain Kirk are.
Yes.
Luke Skywalker.
Luke Skywalker, who was created by a man called George Lucas.
Yeah.
Let's talk about self-insertion characters right there.
Unfortunately, we are at time.
No.
I have feelings and opinions.
Which means you can look for us to continue this discussion in the quarantine panels we will be doing after DragonCon.
You promise?
Do you promise?
Yes, we will do. We will do more truly outrageous. We will cover all this topic with all of these lovely people. Lola had to leave because she had to take care of her dogs. But starting with Bethany, where can people find you online?
Probably the easiest place to find me is at deejgray.com. That's my website for my writer persona, and it's got all my links on there, as well as my blog and links to my Patreon and my Twitter and all that jazz. And I'm actually super excited because I've got a couple of ebook projects that are coming out for publication where the artwork has been done by Denise, and I can't wait to show them to you guys. They're so good. Like, literally hire Denise for your ebook things because it's just so good.
Denise.
So that fun little thing right there that says at layman's terms with the funny spelling, because my last name is French and we hate the English language and that H is always silent. You can find me on Instagram. I don't post very often because I go between mediums and I'm actually on a rather large animation project at the moment, but you can always find me on Instagram. I love chatting with people. I would love to hear from you guys. Please don't hesitate. I'm not incredibly responsive just because I've got a lot going on, but I love your messages and follow me for fun art, fun and weird art.
Jessa?
You can just search for Good to Be a Geek and you will find me. Otherwise, just look for Sultry Mix Zoe and you will find all of my socials.
On the Twitters.
Yeah.
We're in Canada, so I don't know if you have social media.
Yeah, never. No, that's not where I met you or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, actually it was on the Usenet. But no, I do have a professional teacher Twitter that you can follow me if you want to learn about how to teach people. And you're welcome to follow me there. My Instagram is mostly about my sewing and my board games, so have fun with that. But beyond that, if you come to the RevSF Facebook page, as I said before, that's pretty much me.
And Sue?
This right here, that's me on Twitter. And you can also find me at womenatwarp.com or Women at Warp on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah, if you are in any interest at any way whatsoever about females and feminism and Star Trek, it is essential listening.
Yeah. Well, I thank you. It's basically just more of today.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you can find me here on the Twitter, or you can find me on the Revolution, Classics Track Facebook group, which means
you're not on the Revolution SF page anymore. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, you already know where to find me because you're here. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for all the lovely comments. This will be headed up. It should already be on the YouTubes, and everybody enjoy the rest of virtual DragonCon 2020. Woo! Joe, get back in here and turn this thing off.
Joe, where'd you go, Joe?
What?